Thank you, Chairman and Senate Committee, for allowing me to speak in support of Senate Bills 589 and 590, and for making time to hear my story as I journey in recovery from child sexual abuse. These bills are critical to empowering victims of childhood sex abuse, not only to reclaim our lost agency, but also to put a stop to pedophiles and predators in Missouri. Research has shown that such perpetrators will not stop. They must be stopped. My name is Tammy Woods. Presently, I live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, but I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, where we raised our children and where I was a victim of child sexual abuse by my pastor, Mike Bickle, when I was 14. My abuse occurred in an unincorporated county of St. Louis called South County. There is a police report on file there, though no action has been taken because of the statute of limitations. I am not alone in aging out of the pursuit of justice for child sexual abuse. Studies will show that the average age of coming forward with a story of child sexual abuse is 52 years old. I was 57 years old, 43 years after my abuse began, before I could see with clarity and begin to articulate what had happened to me. Unfortunately, for victims who are silenced for decades, when we are finally able to connect the dots and summon the courage to share our story, the legal system fails us by saying our lack of recourse is our fault. We waited too long to face the repressed trauma within. We didn't have the right frames, and we couldn't access the memories fast enough. And so silence and helplessness remain our portion, while our abusers are empowered to continue their abuse. My story of child sexual abuse began in the summer of 1980 when I had just turned 14. My family started attending Mike Bickle's church, where his sophisticated and premeditated grooming of my entire family began immediately. Mike became fast friends with my dad, created closeness with our families, and arranged for me to babysit for him and his wife every Monday night. He gave me special attention, tutoring me in the Bible. He found ways to spend time with me. He put gifts in my freshman locker at school. And once his hook was set, he began to reel me into a reality I could never have imagined. Mike told me over and over that he believed his wife was going to die and that we would be married. Unbeknownst to me, this would be a line he would use for decades as a serial predator. Before I met Mike, I had never been on a date with a boy, kissed a boy, or even held a boy's hand. As my pastor, he took my first kiss. He took my security, my relationships, my hobbies, and my very agency. He devastated me by taking my innocence at 14 years old. And he did all of this while manipulatively framing it as love and alluding to God and marriage. He told me over and over again that if we were ever caught, that I would have to own it. In other words, the burden of initiative would fall on me because he had a family and a ministry. I believed him, and I lived in a heightened state of anxiety because of this pressure. Though he moved to Kansas City when I was a junior in high school, he continued his sexual abuse during his visits and his manipulative control and spiritual abuse all throughout high school and college. An independent third-party investigation conducted by Firefly Investigations, LLC, into Mike Bickle and the ministry he founded, the International House of Prayer in Kansas City, reported in February 2025 that Mike Bickle's sexual behavior with me as a teenager, quote, escalated into sexual assault and deviant sexual intercourse as defined by current Missouri Statute 566.010, Chapter 566, and Chapter 568. The legal definitions of these crimes under Missouri law underscore the severity and criminal nature of his conduct, end quote. To simply sum up, Mike's sexual abuse and emotional control and manipulation of me was extensive. I married my husband after I graduated from college in 1988, and with that, Mike's sexual abuse stopped. But I could not see what Mike had really done, and I was duped into believing he was repentant, and I was his greatest mistake. I vowed to take his secret to the grave, and I did so for 43 years as I watched his influence as a religious leader expand to an international scope. Over the years, Mike treated my family with extra attention and generosity, a seemingly supportive figure, all the while trying to do intermittent reinforcements to keep me silent. And this went on for decades. While my consciousness seemed to have made peace with the trauma I suffered, my body had not. It wasn't until December 2023 that I woke up to the nature of my childhood sexual abuse while reading Deborah's victim statement concerning her abuse by Mike Bickle. It was as if an internal detonator went off inside of me as I suddenly realized his evil abuse and deceptive control. He never stopped his predatory behavior. I wasn't the only one. With professional therapy, trauma therapy, I also came to understand that the decade-long, mysterious physical symptoms of chronic pain and life-controlling claustrophobia that caused panic attacks, which had suddenly manifested later in life, were actually trauma responses to the abuse I suffered as a child. My body kept the score. In summary, 17 women have come forward as victims of Mike Bickle. 2 of us were minors. He has ridden out every statute of limitations, silencing his victims with deceptive and controlling tactics, intermittent reinforcements, bribes, and threats of lawsuits. There are 0 consequences for this dangerous and serial predator. Today, he is free to choose and abuse his next victims. The journey to awareness of sexual abuse is long. Trauma repression and memory loss are real, especially when spiritual abuse is involved. Shame and fear are paralyzing. The manipulative and deceptive frames of predators can take decades to unravel. After all, we were children. There should not and must not be a timer on this process. The statute of limitations does not consider the now well-researched and confirmed obstacles that victims of child sexual abuse must overcome. Mr. Chairman and committee members, let the Show Me State show an example how to turn the tide of justice by honoring the current research of trauma professionals and by standing with children. The child victims of Missouri, including me, ask for your help today in leveling the playing field. Allow us to do what we couldn't do as children. Fight back and pursue justice. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of Senate Bill 589 and 590, which would give the children of Missouri the legal footing needed to fight back against predators and step out of the silent shadows of victimization. My name is Deborah Perkins. Presently, I live in Raymore, Missouri. International Christian leader Mike Bickle began grooming me at the age of 12. Like Tammy Woods, I came from a loving and a beautiful family with a wonderful father, mother, and family system. However, it was no match for a sophisticated predator and renowned Christian figure. He groomed my entire family to trust him and view him as a hero, which led me to move to Kansas City to join his church. From roughly age 19 to 23, I endured a dark, secret life of sexual abuse that involved my own pastor taking my faith and twisting it and confusing it, belittling and degrading lies that held me in a prison of torment and shame. He said God had told him that his wife would die and that we would be married. He used the same lie on Tammy Woods and countless other victims. He used Bible verses to tell me that this was my destiny. He coerced me into sexual activity and varying versions of intercourse. He then made me pray and repent for it. He gave me alcohol when I was too young to drink and took advantage of me physically while I was under the influence, only to later come up with spiritual language for all that had occurred. He rented an apartment for me. He began to isolate me for his own sexual purposes and conditioned me to be more pliable for the abuse by compelling me to fast 3 days a week in order to be more radical for God, like the early Christians. He then told me he would help me sleep better by providing me wine to drink, and he gave me sleeping pills. I don't know all that happened while I was under those influences. He controlled every bit of my diet, relationships, time, and told me I was living like the early Christian monks in a radical way for God, while all of it was intended to weaken me, isolate me, and further my compliance as his sexual victim. I lived a secret horror that no one knew about while protecting him with my silence because I believed it all. I thought somehow his work for God was more important than what I was enduring. The principle of an NDA was used on me without the legal papers, in that he kept me silent for the sake of shielding his ministry and church. I felt I had no choice. He used coded language to keep holding me under his influence even after the abuse stopped. He dominated every part of my life, grooming my friends with extra attention and bonding so that they wouldn't notice all that was going on. After years of the physical abuse, I got enough out of his grip and I found the courage to move on. I met the wonderful man who is now my husband, yet while I dated him, I had profound feelings of conflict, wondering if I was violating my faith, if God wanted to wait for my pastor at his, God wanted me to wait for my pastor as his intended wife. I can't describe to the committee today how deeply dark these webs of entrapment truly are. This so-called Christian pastor was using cult tactics and spiritual language in his sexual abuse, which is the reason it took so long for me to unravel it all and understand the nature of what had happened. More than 20 years ago, 20 years after my abuse, I heard the story of one of Bill Cosby's victims, and I suddenly realized the nature of what I had experienced. I knew for the first time that it wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. I fell to my kitchen floor and I wailed. I knew for the first time it wasn't my fault. I had been confronting the evil, controlling system that Mike Bickle created for years. But now I realize this 42-year-old predator assaulted me as an innocent 19-year-old, and none of it was my fault. I began the process of confronting him, but at the helm of his organization, he fought back, taking to his pulpit and using it to discredit and bully me. Right now, he has all the power. Because of the present laws, I and many abuse victims in Missouri have none. Mr. Chairman, committee members, without amending the laws in Missouri, nothing can be done to stop these types of predators whose abuse is sophisticated enough to require many years to disentangle. It took me over 20 years to understand that it wasn't my fault. We must give the children of Missouri as much time as they need. It is my belief that the legal provision of the statute of limitations that were intended to provide clarity of evidence actually deny child victims of sexual abuse a voice, as it often takes us too many years to gain that clarity. As someone whose life has been devastated by this harm, it seems a small kindness to ask, Mr. Chairman, committee members, please give us, the victims of Missouri, more time to find our voices. Thank you.
Thank you for making time to hear from me today. I know everyone's tired and short on time, but I ask of your ear right now. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my perspective today. My name is Gracia, and I stand before you not only as someone who has survived unspeakable abuse.
My name is Elizabeth Herder, and I'm a Missouri resident for the better part of 25 years. I worked closely with an alleged sexual predator of teen girls and young women named Mike Bickle of the International House of Prayer. He's the former leader, no longer. I helped him raise millions and millions of dollars for his empire, unaware of the evil lurking below. The dark was so dark and the evil so deep, I couldn't even see it. I say alleged sexual predator because under current laws concerning the statute of limitations for his early victims, it will always be alleged. There won't be any justice, dignity, or recompense for them. They were unable to speak about their abuse in time. So as long as perpetrators are able to manipulate, shame, and coerce into silence long enough, which is their power alley, they will never be held accountable. Mike Bickle built an empire, and he enjoyed the protection of the state. He enjoyed the protection of no taxes. He first was a 501c3, then reincorporated as a church, and to this day, the International House of Prayer in Kansas City, Missouri is incorporated as a church so that no one can see inside. Through a series of alarming disclosures, former leaders, me being one of them, became aware of the abuse, and we took everything within us to try and take him down and to hold him accountable. But as another victim talked about, the independent investigation, this was law enforcement, a professional firm, found 17 minimum. We actually know there's many many more. And what I'm trying to speak to is the ability when perpetrators, they are powerful people, they are often sociopaths. They can control way more than their victims of sexual abuse. They can control millions of dollars. They control huge organizations. They can have power and influence. We've heard about the average age of being 52, so I won't say that again. But without a change in the law, Mike Bickle may never be held accountable for destroying a child's life. You heard from Tammy Woods. She said sexual predators do not stop. They must be stopped. Even now, 2 weeks ago, I got a testimony from a young woman saying, I was one of his favorites. He took me to his office and he gave me candy and money and told me I was so special. This is like recent. So we've got 5 decades. How many children has Mike Bickle touched that no one knows about yet? We have to make sure that the look back law, part of the law, is changed so that, because it's all that will stand between him and other victims. And so I beseech you, sitting board members, that you would do right by the just and good society that is America, this extraordinary place. God has given you power. He has given the sword to the government. The Bible says that. And so it is your responsibility and your authority to take care of this and to protect me and my children and everyone in this room. Thank you so much for your time. I'm in support of Bills 589 and 590.
Honorable members of the Senate, I just thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nicole. I'm a citizen of Missouri. I'm a survivor of sexual abuse, which occurred twice in my childhood at ages 4 and 9. The first abuser was a babysitter. My mom blamed me and shamed me at 4 years old for what happened with the babysitter she hired. Then later on, when I endured more abuse at 9, due to the shame, I never reported it to my parents. He was a friend of the family. We took vacations together. Then later on, that culture of silence and shame that surrounded my childhood was a setup for the abuse at IHOPKC, where I endured assault and abuse by senior leadership at IHOPKC while in my 20s. They blamed me for the abuse, and they themselves were inflicting upon me. They abused and groomed an individual who now stalks me to this day. As a result, I've not been able to live in my own house for a year. At 49 years old, I'm still learning to make sense of it all. But this is the year that I am finding my voice and my courage. It is an honor to speak for the victims that do not have a voice. My message is this: sexual abuse may have a statute of limitations while murder does not have one. However, I would like to make the case that all sexual abuse, especially childhood sexual abuse, is a type of murder. It is a murder of our innocence and the attempted murder of our soul. It is a murder of our voice, which we can only pray will be resurrected at some point before we die. 40 plus years later, with the unveiling of the abuse at IHOP and my coming to terms with what happened to me, I have just now found the freedom to tell you my story. And it's long past the statute of limitations 40 plus years later. I didn't know how to talk about it. People asked me, why didn't you tell anyone before? And I said, my answer is that I was 4 years old. And when the stuff happened to me at 20 years old, it was because of what happened to me at 4 that I hadn't yet been able to come to terms with. It set me up for that. Sexual abuse is cruel, and it silences the victims because they lose their agency to speak up for themselves. We are speaking up now. I'm asking you to advocate for those who lack a voice, and I implore you to vote yes on SB 589 and SB 590. Thank you.
Honorable members of the Senate, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Sarah Markman, and I'm a survivor of both child and clergy sexual abuse. I'm sharing this testimony in support of SB 589 and 590, hoping that all residents in Missouri who have faced child sexual abuse will have the needed support to seek justice when they feel ready to do so. Today, the members of the Senate have the opportunity to pass laws that will supersede the plans of perpetrators, exposing historical sexual abuse and keeping it from happening to children in the future. When a child is sexually abused, the losses are immeasurable. At the age of 16, I was on a road full of opportunity, filled with great expectation. I sang on a traveling team, served locally and internationally to help the poor, and had great aspirations for my life. My youth pastor began to groom me, and when I was 17, He pressed for sexual activity, using the Bible to justify his actions. Every time he pushed a boundary, I cried and wished it hadn't happened, but I never told anyone. He kept me in his grip throughout my college years, stalking me during my senior year. His abuse harmed me sexually, emotionally, psychologically, and relationally. My hope is that the losses that children of sexual abuse face are heavily weighed when considering passing these two bills. Our family moved to Missouri in 2009 to be a part of IHOPKC, and we were residents there until 2021. In 2018, my husband and I became aware of claims of child sexual abuse being raised about one of the leaders of IHOPKC. Hearing the whistleblower's story shocked me as it sounded so much like mine. We reached out to a judge in Ohio, and he explained that I had been a victim of child sexual abuse by clergy, specifically sexual battery. We looked into pursuing a civil suit, but I needed more time. Today, I'm outside of the statute of limitations, as are many victims in the state of Missouri. It wasn't until now, at the age of 45, after 7 years of counseling, that I would be ready to pursue a civil lawsuit against my perpetrator. It is unjust to have a limitation set on one's timetable to be able to recognize, talk about, and pursue the injustice of child sexual abuse. Research proves that it takes around 20 years for most survivors to begin to disclose their abuse. I agree with the Children's Justice Campaign that says, we don't believe that sexual predators and bad acting institutions should benefit from the shame-induced silencer and trauma-triggered delay they cause in their victims. Statute of limitations are ill-fitted for children who have sexual abuse claims. When the IHOPKC scandal broke in October of 2023, I made the decision to use my social media platforms to go public with my story and to advocate for the hundreds of victims who suffered abuse within its walls. I carry a deep ache because of so many of the victims have no recourse in the current statutes. Reformed laws have the opportunity to make wrong things right. Passing SB 589 and 590 in Missouri will pave the way for other states to do the same, give a voice to the voiceless, and will ultimately change history. Thank you.
My name is Maggie Syret. I've been a Missouri resident since 1996, when my husband and I came to the United States to attend a church and small Bible school run by Mike Bickle. We helped found the International House of Prayer of Kansas City with Mike Bickle in '99 and worked very closely with him until 2016, believing him to be a sincere and godly pastor and leader. In October 2023, that illusion was shattered when a good friend of ours publicly disclosed something that she hadn't shared with any person, including her husband, until a few months earlier, that she had been the victim of clergy sexual abuse by Mike Bickle more than 20 years earlier, and you've heard her testimony this morning and others. So I'm going to miss a lot out because a lot of it has been said. I'm appalled that a man who has allegedly been a predator and abuser of girls and women for decades cannot be brought to justice because of the statute of limitations. These women deserve justice. Many have held their pain for years, too ashamed, too controlled, too fearful to speak out earlier. Furthermore, Mike Bickle remains a free man, free to groom and abuse other unsuspecting and trusting women and girls. Other perpetrators of sexual abuse also remain free because of the statute of limitations, putting the public, and especially children, at risk. One of the founding principles of this country is justice. As a mother and a grandmother, I am here today with my friends seeking justice. I urge you to pass these bills and ensure that justice is brought to bear in all cases of sexual abuse, no matter how many years since the abuse was committed. Abuse does not cease to be abuse just because time has passed.
My sexual abuse started at 4 and lasted until I was 6 with my first abuser. Later, I was raped when I was 8 years old by my childhood friend's brother, then again at 9 by another friend's brother. On another occasion, I remember lying frozen in bed at my friend's uncle's house while my friend's uncle got in bed with me and began kissing me. I lay there frozen with my eyes tightly closed and pretended to be asleep. It worked. He eventually left. I was 12 years old. I didn't sleep the rest of the night for fear of his reappearing. I have multiple other stories of sexual abuse that I mostly concluded were my fault. I read a book about how pedophiles prey upon Christian children because they're trained to be obedient to adults. I was aware of grooming tactics and tried to educate my children without terrifying them. As you can imagine, having daughters terrified me. I was hyper vigilant about educating them on appropriate touch and teaching them what to do if anyone ever confusingly touched them. My daughters knew they could punch and scream and kick and cuss and run as fast as they could to get away. By this point, our family was on staff at the International House of Prayer in Kansas City, and I thought we were in a healthy community. Little did I know of the darkness that was at the inception of that ministry. I observed some behavior of an older brother towards his sister that was troubling to me, especially given the close proximity of this older child to other younger children. I reported the behavior I had observed to Lenny LaGuardia, who is the director of the Children's Equipping Center, the Children's Ministry Department at the International House of Prayer. Lenny LaGuardia appreciated my concerns and shared them. He told me he believed that there to be incest in the home, and he said he would take care of it. I had no reason to believe that he would not deal with the situation because he was trained in proper protocol. During the exposure of Mike Bickle at the International House of Prayer and his clergy's sexual abuse of multiple women and the cover-up of multiple other victims, many people started to see abuse more clearly. I was horrified to hear that my oldest daughter told me that she had been sexually abused by that boy that I had warned Lenny LaGuardia about. My daughter is courageous. She's in therapy. I'm so proud of her. My other daughter had a sleepover at Diane and Mike Bickle's house. While my husband and I were with our oldest daughter on a weekend trip, our daughter was so excited, and Mike had talked about how they would stay up until midnight and eat cupcakes. She came home sugared up, and she felt so special that she got to spend the night with the Bickles. She told me about her experience and mentioned that she had a choice of where she could sleep that night. She was given 3 options. She could sleep in the bed with Mike and Diane, she could sleep on the floor in the room, or sleep in the other room that had been turned into a closet. Fortunately, my 6-year-old daughter thought the options were strange, and she chose to sleep in the bedroom that had been turned into a closet. I felt sick when I heard that she was offered to sleep in Mike Bickle's bed. I'll stop there.
For the record, we didn't get your name.
Oh, Jennifer Roberts.